they're all explained to be built between the 16th and 19th century, but from what we looked into, and you're looking at the design of these, some of these would have been very difficult to build at that time. So it's almost that maybe they were actually built repurposed in a way, right? So
Yes.
there's not it's not a complete lie that some of these were used as defense bastions, or in the sense of used in the Civil War in America and various other
Well, they
parts of
were called
history.
Bastion forts. Some of them were called Bastion forts. And I think the logical approach that has to be taken here is not to really get into disputing whether some of the star forts were actually constructed, say, in the Georgian period or the Victorian age. They were constructed for naval defensive purposes or as bastion forts or not. One of the main issues when it comes to looking at Tatarian architecture and actually positing the idea that some of these star forts could have possibly been constructed at earlier dates and then were either demolished or rebuilt at later dates
Mm.
comes down to the fact is there are very few architectural drawings.
Yeah.
There is no aerial schematics of a lot of these bastion forts or star forts. And what you're given is just a lot of the time the reign of a Pacific monarch, the reign of a Pacific prince in a Pacific location. You're not even given a lot of the time the name of any of the civil engineers or the architects that were involved in the overall design of such incredibly vast edifices that have become known as bastion forts, star forts, or whatever. So that has really become problematic. The fact there's no etchings, there's no drawings done in stages over 3, 6, 9, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, and so forth, of the progression of the construction of a lot of these bastion forts or star forts anywhere on planet Earth. Yes, some designs were actually drawn out. Yes, there are schematics for some of them, but for very large numbers of them, there isn't. And you have to question, well, if monarchs, the rulers of the day, were so invested in the costings of such vast edifices for the purpose of protecting the nation state or protecting
Mm.
their sovereign kingdom against invasion or foreign armies trying to attack and take their resources and away their liberties, you would have thought that they would have celebrated the construction of such vast bastion forts or star forts by actually recording in tremendous detail over that
Yeah.
3, 6, 9, 12, 18, 24-month period the exact progression and development so they could then celebrate that in their royal courts, in their various urban dwellings, and that the populaces would have looked at them and said, wow, that's a fantastic piece of civil engineering.
That is what raises suspicion about the
That's
whole
right.
process of it. And I think the geometry is another thing as well. Obviously, now we've got the ability to see things from overhead with Google Maps and all this.
That is correct.
They
Yeah.
clearly see that this is pretty precise. And, there often were cities built within these star forts as well. So that would make sense in what you're saying.
That's right.
Communities that actually people would, they would harness this energy and almost like power a whole community or civilization within that star fort.
And yeah, I totally agree, and that makes absolute sense in terms of the piezoelectricity being absorbed into the stonework or the brickwork of these bastion forts or star forts, effectively making these vast edifices literally ether units of Tartaria if they were constructed by the Nordic Tatarians and the Turkic peoples. But what we have to remember also is here, what you just touched on the idea of the aerial views in the modern age that we can see, we it's clear that these edifices, these star forts, were constructed with sacred geometry. The measurements are so precise.
Mm.
So I will then put this question out there. Was some form of geodesy used? Now, geodesy obviously is the measurement of distances between sacred spaces and alignments, and landmarks and so forth, which has been touched on, I think, before we've discussed this.
In the ley
So
lines, the stone circle, yeah.
absolutely. So what we're looking at here was a similar process when it came to their civil engineering being used, because something like that would have to have been used, because in even in the Georgian period, the Victorian age, there wasn't the kind of technical gadgetry available to
No,
the construction industry to just build these vast edifices on coastal coastlines as some kind of naval defense, or some kind of keep to place soldiers, and to have an armory of some nature, in the event some kind of conflict or warfare was to suddenly occur.